But today, you have the money from gold. You have gold in Zamfara, you have gold in Abuja, you have gold in Nasarawa. People, individual, are now mining this gold and there's nothing on the table for the other state to share. But the oil and gas is being shared to all the states of the Federation. So we are not saying that the...
Hello and what's up guys? In this video, Southern Nigeria is making a loud and very serious demand that could change the future of this country forever. They are pushing for resource control, state police, through federalism, and a total overhaul of the 1999 constitution. And the message is clear: Nigeria cannot continue like this. This demand is coming from PANDEF, the Pan-Niger Delta Forum, and it's already sending shockwaves across the nation. Their argument is simple but deep. The Niger Delta produces most of Nigeria's oil wealth, yet the region still suffers underdevelopment, pollution, and neglect. During a major constitutional review hearing, PANDEF openly declared that the 1999 constitution is not the people's constitution. They insist it was written under military rule and does not reflect the realities of today's Nigeria. Their spokesperson explained that at independence, region control their resources and pay tax to the center. That system, they said, helped every region grow at its own pace. But everything changed when military rule took over and centralized power. He made a shocking comparison. While oil wealth from the Niger Delta is shared among all states, gold in states like Zamfara, Nasarawa, and Abuja is being mined by individuals with nothing going to the national table. According to PANDEF, this imbalance is dangerous. They are now demanding that states must control their own natural resources, keep a large share, and only pay tax to the federal government for things like defense and foreign relations. But it didn't stop there. PANDEF is also pushing hard for state policing, saying the federal government can no longer control Nigeria's security alone. They reveal that governors have little real power over police commanders in their own states, and that is part of why insecurity keeps growing. They are also calling for INEC chairman to be appointed by the National Council of State, not the president, EFCC and ICPC to be merged, a proper referendum law so Nigeria can decide their future, removal of immunity clause so governors can be investigated while in office, traditional rulers to be given constitutional roles. One of the most chilling warnings came when PANDEF said plainly that if the imbalance continues, the country could break. They also revealed that they are already holding meetings with Afenifere, Ohaneze Ndigbo, and the Middle Belt Forum, and that most regions are now on the same page. They even called on the government to return to the 2014 National Conference recommendations, saying that documents already holds the solution Nigeria is looking for. Now, the big question is this: will Nigeria listen, or will this warning be ignored again? Because this time, the message from the South is not a whisper, it is a final alarm. Guys, I will let you watch this video for yourself so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. Take a look, guys, and remember to share your thoughts after watching.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much for joining us so early on Breakfast Extra for a Sunday. So, Mr. Aweribi, let's start by asking how vocal PANDEF have. Well, we know how vocal they've been, but have they been vocal about the needs for resource control, for instance? Can you explain why this is so critical for the South, particularly in the Niger Delta?
Thank you very much for having me. You can understand very clearly that the people of Niger Delta are peace-loving people. Today, it is the oil and gas that sustains Nigeria's economy. There is no part of this country that is not blessed with resources. The northern Nigeria is blessed with a lot of solid minerals, such as gold, such as lithium, such as tin. But today, you do not have this solid mineral money on the table to be shared on a monthly basis by the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission. The oil and gas that is from the Niger Delta, that is what sustains the Nigeria economy. And the people of Niger Delta are being treated like second-class citizens. That is why we are advocating for true resource control, because that was what our leaders fought for at independence. In fact, all the regions at independence agreed that everybody should control his resources and pay tax to the center. And that was what we practiced before the military came on board under Agoyin Rose and destroyed the entire thing. And till today, Nigeria has never witnessed peace again. What we are now advocating for in this constitutional amendment is that we should fall back to the agreement at independence, where people control their resources and pay tax to the center, where people cannot grow at their own pace. For example, when oil was discovered in Oloibiri, the Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa wrote a letter to the Premier of Eastern Region congratulating him because he had seen additional source of revenue in his region. But today, you have the money from gold. You have gold in Zamfara, you have gold in Abuja, you have gold in Nasarawa. People, individuals, are now mining this gold. And there's nothing on the table for the other states to share. But the oil and gas is being shared to all the states of the Federation. So we are now saying that there should be resource control. That is one of the things we are advocating for in the constitutional amendment. There are a lot of things also. For example, insecurity in Nigeria, this problem can be solved through state security, where the state control their own security, and this insecurity will stop because the federal government is taking more than they can chew. The federal government, the center, can no longer control the security system of Nigeria. We're also advocating that INEC, the appointment of INEC chairman and commissioner, shouldn't be by the executive, by the presidency. It should be appointed by the National Council of States. And we're also advocating at this moment that there are ICPC, for example. The ICPC and EFCC should be merged. There is no need to have two bodies pursuing the same thing. Let us merge ICPC and EFCC to be one. We are also saying in this constitutional amendment that there should be referendum. In fact, there's no provision for referendum in the 1999 Constitution. People should be able to determine where they want to be. If they are not fairly treated, there should be referendum where people can say either we want to belong to Nigeria that is not working, or we want to belong to Nigeria. So what we are saying at this moment is that let every region control their resources and pay tax to the center for international maintenance of international diplomacy and the protection of the territorial integrity.
Now,
These
Mr.
are some of the
just
things.
A second, sir, if you don't mind. Mr. Minimini, I've been trying to get your attention. Now, I didn't want you to go too far from when you spoke about resource control. You also gave the example of gold in other parts, northern parts of Nigeria, and how these resources are being mined by individuals who do not give back to the community. Now, I'm asking, if you're asking for control from the grassroots level, because these resources, well, they're being gotten from the grassroots, does PANDEF have an apparatus at this level to make sure that these resources, if handed over to the states to take care of by themselves, will not be mismanaged, that these taxes that you talk about will definitely be duly paid to the federal account? What apparatus will there be in place?
Okay, thank you very much. At the moment, if you look at the extraction of gas and crude oil, the federal government cannot tell you the truth as to the quantum of gas they are taking from Niger Delta. Nobody knows the quantum of gas that is being taken daily from our soil. So if the state is allowed to control their resources, there will be high development. For example, at independence, the regions that were the federating unit as at that time were contributing 20% to federal government and 30% to the resharing pool and retain 50%. So the issue of mismanagement will not arise because everybody in the state knows very well that these resources belong to the state and everybody will be involved. A situation where Commissioner of Finance goes to Abuja every 4 weeks to collect money. The system has made the state governors to be lazy. Nobody looks at how they can generate revenue in their area again because these natural resources have been taken over by the federal government. So we want people to develop at their own pace. Once these resources are controlled by this federating unit, We are saying that there should be federative unit, and this present state can be federative unit. Some people are advocating for this region to be the federative unit, but the essence is that once these resources are controlled at the federative unit level, they cannot develop at their own pace. Some people will choose to develop on agriculture, some people will develop on technology. Now there's no competition. All the states are very lazy because every 4 weeks you give them money. So that is why we are saying, let us identify federative units, and this federative unit will control their resources. Resources will better be managed. Now you have IOC extracting our oil and gas and give us some percentage, 30% minimum.
Right.
The Constitution says. But what they give to us can actually be said to be 30%. Because what they give to us at the moment is less than 30%, because the IOC or the settler takes about 40%. So it is the 30% of the 60% that is being given to us at the moment, which is unfair. We should be able to retain 50% of what is generated from our area by us.
Right.
So resource control through federalism is the only thing that...
Right, Mr. Minimi, if you can, if you can hear me, you've talked about federalism, true federalism, you've talked about resource control, you've talked about state policing, right? And these are all of the issues that not just, PANDEF and the southern part of Nigeria have asked, but also the eastern part as well, especially when it comes to state policing and true federalism. But do you think that the Constitution can be amended to sort of accommodate the needs of PANDEF and the need of the South, specifically with the state control, resource control, state control over resources? Do you think that it can be amended? And if it doesn't, what would PANDEF and all the leaders in the South do?
We are appealing to every right-thinking Nigeria. The needful needs to be done. Of course, the 1999 Constitution, it is not people's constitution. It was written by the military and handed over to Obasanjo, in fact, even after inauguration. So, and we know that the 1999 Constitution is made difficult to be amended. But we are talking of peace, we are talking of development. We are now appealing to the State House of Assembly that after the procedure by the National Assembly, the governors at the moment who control the various State House of Assembly, because we know that the governors have overwhelming influence on the State House of Assembly, they should try as much as possible to get this country to be on the true path of resource control. Otherwise, we believe that Nigeria will break. Nigeria will break because there is imbalance. You take your gold, you take your lithium, you take your iron ore, you take your columbine in northern Nigeria, and everybody now lives on oil and gas. So we believe that we shall see the light at the end of the tunnel. The 1999 Constitution, in fact, to us, should be overhauled because the Constitution says we, the people of Nigeria, that is false, that is lie. We, the people of Nigeria, never meant to write the 1999 Constitution. That is why the Patriots is now saying that we need to overhaul the Constitution of Nigeria, and we agree with them. So we are appealing to Nigeria to allow true federalism and resource control say true in the amendment, because if it does not say true, it means we shall continue to remain like this. Few people will control the resources of this country at the detriment of the generality of the citizens of Nigeria. Today, you have insecurity in northern Nigeria at a high heaven.
Right.
That is as a result of the extraction of the solid mineral by individuals.
Mr. Minimi, I have to come in here and just say that the argument at the federal level as it regards our resources is that it's a commonwealth, right? And that, there have to be institutions set over it to sort of, control it. And if you leave it to state control, it won't be so much as commonwealth anymore. What would you say to that argument?
It is not true. When we were under regions, the Eastern region was able to build University of Nigeria from the resources they generate from their region and pay tax to the center. Awolowo was able to build the first TV station in Nigeria from the resources generated from Western region, and did a lot of things, established university also. And so Ahmadu Bello was able to build university in the northern Nigeria. That is example of resources being controlled at the federative unit. So we have a good example in Nigeria from 1960 to 1966, when the region were controlling their own resources and paid tax to the center and develop at their own pace. We saw development better than as it is today. If some of the elderly people are asked either to live in the Nigeria of 1960 to 1966 and live in the Nigeria of now, everybody will prefer living in the Nigeria of old because things were better. So that argument that resources will be mismanaged by the federative unit does not hold water, because we have good example.
There's also the north and the south. When it comes, I mean, I know that I don't want to be fixated on this, but we do understand that, you know, these resources are important, and especially for the oil-rich Niger Delta, it contributes to, if not 90, I mean 90 is overshooting it, but it contributes to a large number of our GDP and adds to the budgets of every year when it comes to FAC allocations and the rest for, you know, resources, or rather for projects that the government goes on. If it's state controlled, what happens to the contribution to the GDP? What happens to the contribution to the budget allocations? What happens to those things, right? And that's what we mean by commonwealth. How would that work if this state resource control is being, you know, implemented in this constitution?
Gross domestic product is the totality of the production within the country. It doesn't mean that if it is controlled by the federal government, it is only then it becomes a GDP. GDP is the total production, you know, whether it is done by the federative unit, whether it is done by the federal government. So, and the federal government is taking more than they can chew. Today, if you look at the exclusive list, it's too much for the center. That is why they cannot perform. What does the federal government need? The federal government needs to maintain international diplomacy. The federal government needs to protect the territory of Nigeria. These are the things the federal government needs to do. You don't need a federal government also building secondary school. You have federal secondary schools. You don't need them. You leave those things to the federative unit. There are a lot of things the federal governments are involved, which they ought not to do. When your resources are controlled by the federative unit, then you reduce the exclusive list. And most of these things will not be done by the state. They cannot develop at their own pace. This is what we are talking about. Today, the federal government is disorganized. Disorganized in a sense that the things in the exclusive list are too many for them to handle. That is why we are talking of devolution of power. Devolve more power to the federative unit or to the state.
Now, Mr. Ominimini, we've let's not be too fixated on just resource control. Let's move to other things. You speak of true federalism, and I'm wondering how exactly PANDEF is also incorporating the other regions. How much consultations, particularly with the North, is PANDEF doing to be able to actualize this true constitutional review?
Thank you very much. Today, PANDEF is meeting with Afenifere. Today, PANDEF is also meeting with Ohanaeze Ndigbo. And PANDEF is also meeting with the Middle Belt Forum. The Middle Belt Forum, PANDEF, Ohanaeze Ndigbo, and Afenifere, they meet constantly to talk about the way forward in Nigeria. So, the entire eastern region, the entire southeast Nigeria, southwest Nigeria, south Nigeria, and the Middle Belt, they are always meeting and everybody is on one page. That was why you saw that in the last constitutional conference, 2014 conference, under Goodluck Jonathan, in fact, the recommendations favor true federalism. We are now saying, go back to 2014 recommendations of the 2014 conference recommendation. If you can implement the recommendation by the 2014 conference, Nigeria will move forward. When President Buhari came on board, he abandoned it. And he was not doing what we call selective implementation, which is bad. Nigeria needs to fall back to 2014 recommendation of that conference so that we can achieve a greater height.
As we're talking about, some of the demands that PANDEF is making, is asking for in this constitutional review and reform, one of them is state policing, and that's been at the fore of almost all of the regions in Nigeria when it comes to state policing and the decentralization of security in Nigeria. I want you to talk to how critical it is for the Niger Delta and the southern part of Nigeria, just to sound the alarm of how important it is more than ever that security needs to be decentralized and fall back to the states.
Thank you very much. Today, in Nigeria, no governor can control commissioner of police. If a governor issues instruction to commissioner of police and even AIG, let me not even go to the level of IGP. If AIG issues instruction to CP, commissioner of police, the commissioner of police will take the order of the AIG or of the IGP against the instruction of the governor of that state, if the instructions are not the same. That tells you that the constitution, which makes a governor a chief security officer of a state, is not sincere. That is why we need state policing. That is why we need state policing. The EDGs of the states will be posted within the state, where everybody knows each other. Although some politicians are arguing that if powers are given to governors, they will misuse it mostly, to chase away opposing political view. But that one is insignificant, because we also know that your tenure will not be more than 8 years. That is why PANDEF is also advocating that immunity clause in the Constitution should be removed. We want that immunity clause to be removed. Once that immunity clause is removed and we have state policing, it means even a sitting governor can also be charged to court, can also be investigated, if while in office. So that state policing will reduce insecurity. A man from Zamfara is transferred to a place like Bayelsa or Delta or Cross River. That man does not know the nook and cranny of the state. That man is even afraid to go to certain area to make arrests. But if the EDGs of the states now work within the state in the security apparatus, in fact, crime will be reduced, because there will be no fear, and even the tendency to do the work will be there. The issue of this is not my place, anything can happen, will not be there. So state policing is very, very important. That is why we are also advocating that there should be constitutional rule for traditional rulers. Because today, traditional rulers are mere advisors to local government chairmen. But once you have constitutional rule for traditional ruler, they will complement this issue of the state policing. They will also help to protect the tradition. They will also help to get information feedback to state security agencies.